Hi, everyone, and welcome to this really exciting session here from the Wheeling Symphony Orchestra. My name is John Devlin. I'm the music director and conductor of the orchestra. And today I am joined by two of the fantastic members of Third Coast Percussion, who next week are coming to Wheeling to collaborate with the orchestra on Clarice Assad's brand new piece called Play. And David, Robert, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Wheeling.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah. And so part of today's session is going to be certainly to talk about what we're going to do next week. But to a lot of our audience, this will be the first time that they're hearing of you and seeing you in action. Would you mind talking a little bit about the ethos of Third Coast Percussion and how you guys found each other and the type of work that you do?
Sure. Third Coast Percussion is a Chicago-based quartet of percussionists. We've been playing concerts all over the world for the last 20 years. And we love bringing exciting and unexpected musical experiences to audiences. So that can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes we're working with young kids. Sometimes we're playing concerts at Carnegie Hall or the Barbican Center in London, like we were last week. And sometimes it means that we get to be in front of an orchestra as soloists playing incredible music by composers whose music we love. And that's what we'll be doing in Wheeling.
Yeah, Robert, tell us a little bit about what it was like there in London.
Oh yeah. So we're just back from about 10 days in Europe. We performed in Rotterdam, London, and Warsaw, and that was another collaborative project called Metamorphosis that involved Third Coast Percussion as well as a couple of fantastic movement artists
Mm.
and choreography by the organization Movement Art Is, just Lil Buck and John Bogues. And so it's sort of a synthesis of contemporary classical percussion ensemble music and U.S. street dance styles in this very seamless program with lighting and sort of a through line with the choreography. It's a real blast. It's a program we've been playing for a couple of years, and it was fun to then take it overseas and connect it with a different audience.
Beautiful. And for those of you who are watching this video that are familiar with the Wheeling Symphony, you can see how aligned Third Coast Percussion is with the values of the Wheeling Symphony, where the first value of our orchestra is to present new American music by living composers from diverse backgrounds. And Clarice Assad is a Brazilian American composer. And as you probably know, she was with us just last March to do her piece Egel. And so we were so excited by the response of Clarice and our audience that we had to bring her back as soon as possible. And then this surprising element, a little bit of a different way to construct concerts or think about, in this case, a concerto, that's right up our alley too, as we redesign concert experiences for our audience here in Wheeling. So this is a perfect marriage. And this is the second time the piece Play by Clarice will be performed. There's such an interesting genesis for the idea here with Clarice's young children and the way that that manifested in the piece, but also your relationship with Clarice and her father Sergio from previously with Archetypes and other work that you've done with them. Do you want to talk a little bit about your work with Clarice and then how Play emerged from that relationship?
Sure. Yeah, so we met Clarice and Sergio years ago. They, for many years, are based in Chicago, where we're based. And we had known about their work and sort of been fans from afar. And they came to a performance that we gave in Chicago in 2016 and approached us about doing a project, which became Archetypes, which is an album and a concert program that we toured a bunch over the last few years. The six of us wrote the pieces together, and we combined all of our musical voices, so the four percussionists in Third Coast, Sergio on classical guitar, and Clarice doing what she always does, a little bit of everything, singing, playing guitar, playing bass, playing piano, playing, I don't know, kazoo. She conducted us at one point. And we just immediately knew that Clarice was a collaborator that we wanted to work with again, because her music is so brilliant, her ideas are so refreshing, and she's just such a wonderful person. So she came to us with the idea of writing a concerto, and we had been talking about working with her again anyway, so it was just perfect timing. And I don't know, Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about Play and how
Oh,
it all came
sure. Yeah,
together?
totally. Yeah. I mean, I think the whole experience with Sergio and Clarice was so an amazing partnership for us because we felt this real kinship as like composer performers. All of us in Third Coast Percussion composed music as well, both individually and together as a quartet. And the Archetypes project was a great chance to sort of expand that. But we just loved the collaborative energy with Sergio and with Clarice. And so when we had this great opportunity to to work with Clarice again for this concerto, we were just excited to like get together, get in a room together, and try things out and see what the possibilities were. And Clarice has this just amazing energy as a human that I think runs through all of her music as well. And she had all these sort of some very specific ideas she wanted to try out and explore. I think she probably had enough concepts for like a 7 or 8 movement piece, and we wound up with a 3 movement piece. Sort of narrowed things down over time as we saw which things really blossomed naturally. But the sort of through line was this idea of play, all the different versions of the word play and the concept of play, whether it's sort of exploration and finding new sounds, finding what's in your environment, or the emotional idea of like playing with somebody's hearts, playing with someone's emotions. And of course, just like playing music, really, and there are elements of the piece that are very virtuosic, as well as the idea of like a theatrical play. So the first movement of the piece is evolved into this thing where Clarice is narrating, and there's this really fun story where we're half like playing percussion music, and then half doing like a little bit of Foley sound effects with our various instruments to sort of underline parts of the story. So it's a really incredible arc, a nice through line between these different movements that are each exploring different facets of play, but also just an incredible range over the course of the piece.
When I got this score, I had never seen one like it. There's so many instruments that have never before appeared in my desk before. And for you all, you're collaborating in the first movement with spoken word, and the second movement with singing, and the third movement with something between scatting and sprechstimme, something like that. How did you as a group decide on your interpretive approach? And then at what point did Clarice join you to make that decision together as a quintet?
I mean, we really worked on the piece from the beginning very collaboratively with Clarice. Mm-hmm. Again, because we're in Chicago, she was able to come to our studio a number of times. First with just really early ideas, not even rough drafts, but just sort of like concepts. Like, well, what if there was a radio play? Can you get out all of the silliest, let's call them instruments, noisemakers, whatever they are that you've got, and let's just think about how we could tell a story through sound. And that's really what the first movement became. Like we had the funniest moment to me was we had, for some reason, I think we had one of those rubber chickens. There was this like viral video a few years ago of someone like going into a toy store and pressing a bunch of viral chickens, all at the same time, and they all make their noise at the same time, and it's this otherworldly sort of like scream. We were just coming up with different sounds, and we had a couple of squeeze toys, and she's like, okay, we have to have rubber chickens in the piece. So it's everything from that side of things, where it's just like silly, fun toys and like the amazing sounds that things make that are part of our daily lives, to instruments that we've collected on tour as we've been touring around the world, incorporating little gongs and other interesting noise-making devices from other cultures, and then through this process of kind of working really closely with Clarice, eventually it got to the point where she said, "Okay, I know what the piece needs to be," and that was when she did her thing, went off, and just wrote furiously for months, and then the next time we talked to her, she had a whole score and it was done.
Right. Because Clarice has an uncanny ability to premiere a piece every month. We have to figure out how she does that.
I don't know how she does it. Because she does have she's got a family. She's got two young kids. Which we were talking about. I think she spoke a little bit about how part of the inspiration of the piece was, being a new mother, and but being a new parent doesn't always give you a lot of free time to write as much music as she is, but she's making it work. It's really incredible.
Yeah, Robert, would you mind sharing a little bit more about the types of things you experienced in the composition and preparation process?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think one of the things that we love about the collaboration with Clarice, we're very collaborative in working with any composer that we're commissioning for a new piece. Um, but some of them are not always good at figuring out how to like bridge the gap of like, here's what I know, here's what I can see clearly, and here's what I'm not sure about yet. And I think
Mhm.
Clarice does a great job of really getting a lot of things on paper specific and then saying it's sort of like figuring out exactly what the placeholders are that she needs and saying like this there's a sound here. I'm not sure what that is, but she kind of knows just enough to get you to the starting point, and then it makes it very like easy and fun for us to jump in and say like, oh, okay, I think I know. How about this instrument or this instrument? What do you like of those two? Things like that. And so there was a lot of sort of that level of things. And then there's also just actually some really beautiful keyboard writing in the piece too that I think it's not always necessarily the first thing we talk about right when we just start talking about the piece, because there are so many things that really stand out about it in terms of the uniqueness of the piece. But there's such beautiful pitched writing for percussion, really nice use of the marimba and glockenspiel and vibraphone, nice like sort of thematic development, stylistic development throughout the course of the first movement, which
Mm.
has these themes that move through the orchestra, but also move through the percussion keyboard instruments and beautiful counterpoint. And then in the second movement, she takes some of those same instruments and turns them into these very resonant, um, free-sounding landscapes with bowed vibraphone, bowed glockenspiel, and I think she sort of disarms you with the first movement a little bit and the sort of humor and cleverness of it. And then the second movement is just this gorgeous song that she sings in Portuguese. And I think the contrast to that is what really caught us. And then near the end of the piece, there's a cadenza as well, and there was a nice. Again, I think Clarice did such a nice job of framing up kind of about where we were getting to and what we needed there, and then sort of gave us some liberty to like create our own little cadenza to fit into that space. And I think the thematic material of the piece is so clear and so evocative and so catchy that I think we knew really quickly like, oh, here's a theme we can draw on, here's a theme we can draw on, here's things we can put together to sort of then utilize what we know how to do best as performers. And so again, I think it really speaks to the joy of collaborating with Clarice, where she is simultaneously so great at giving something a clear shape and a clear direction, and then also leaving space for the performers to bring their own personalities, their own energy, their own expertise into the piece.
So beautifully said. And as I internalize the score, I love that juxtaposition you drew between the way that we would expect percussion instruments to be used and this and the kind of rhythmic vitality that's present in that first movement, and then we experience something completely different and unexpected in the second movie. I turn the page to the second movement and I'm like, oh, she stops talking and it's not a fairy tale anymore, and the humor is kind of gone. It's like
Yeah.
deeply personal. It feels like something you would sing to your child at the end of an evening, something like that, right? Yeah. So the last question I'd like to ask, because you mentioned this at the beginning, David, if we can go to a mission-based ideology here. We share something very much in common where we're experimenting with concert format. We're trying to bring joy and humor and fun and excitement and the unexpected into the concert hall. And as an orchestra, we talk about this a lot because most orchestras don't approach things the way the Wheeling Symphony does. And we put things in the concerto slot of it. Like last year, we had the world's first concerto for beatbox, rap, and orchestra. And Yo-Yo Ma was on that concert too. So we're trying to like figure out like how to do these types of things. But we get a lot of people who say this is exactly what I want to see, and people say, "Where is the violin and the piano concerto?" Right? I love experimenting in the concerto spot, and I think that this project with two like-minded organizations coming together like we are here with a composer that fits right into this. But the nail is hit directly on the head in the first movement with the text about what you study in music school and who you encounter and how it goes. How do you speak to your audiences and talk to the people that are the supporters of Third Coast about the importance of this type of work, but balancing it with not ignoring the importance of what came before and how vital it is to also have that in our concert halls?
That's a really good question. And I'll say to start off that we also just feel so fortunate to be working with your organization and to find an orchestra that's so forward thinking as the Wheeling Symphony, because it's the exception, not the rule. I think that to a certain extent, because we're a percussion ensemble, that's an entry point for everyone to say, "Oh, okay, I'm here for something different."
Right.
As a classical form, percussion ensemble is relatively new. By relatively new, of course, I mean like 100 years. But in the classical music scheme of things, relatively new compared to string quartets. But even within that framework, we've just always been most energized and excited by how we communicate with an audience. Communication is kind of the key for us to everything. So sometimes that means speaking from stage, which is something that all four of us have gotten really good at. We find that if we can share what a piece means to us personally before we perform it for someone who's never heard it before, that gives an immediate entry point. And also, one other thing I'll say, I know Rob has more to add to this, but very recently we've been inviting audiences to experience our concerts in whatever way they want to. So we sort of can set expectations a little bit. We can come out on stage and say, hey, we're a classically trained ensemble. We went to conservatories and universities. We're familiar with the ways that audiences typically interact with classical music. You sort of sit, listen, and enjoy the silence around you so that you can hear nothing but the music. And then at the end of several movements, when the piece is done, then you can show your appreciation if you choose to. And some of our shows we say, if you see something you like, if you hear something that you like, you put your hands together, it's fine. And it's an experiment for us, because the classical music audience member often wants their listening experience to be undisturbed. But then, especially for a younger generation who sees so many concerts, and maybe most of the concerts they see, they can react to in whatever way that they want to. We think about how we can bring that into the concert hall. And the cool thing about, just to bring it back to Clarice's piece, is that it's kind of inevitable. Like, there's moments of her piece where it's genuinely very funny and not shticky. And laughter is this thing that can break up the typical classical music audience experience in such an incredible way.
Yeah. I think as a percussion ensemble, we have sort of the opportunity and the challenge of being so unfamiliar to people and maybe having fewer associations in people's minds. I think for symphony orchestra, people more generally have an idea of what they think it's going to be, and maybe that creates opportunity for because certain people will want to come to look for that, but then also creates the challenge of if you don't want to be exactly that thing they're looking for, you're trying to reach new audiences or things like that. Maybe you have to do something. For us, the question is, people are like, I don't know what this is until they get into the hall. And so I think for us, there's we always feel like we're looking for that curious audience member. We're looking for that person who is excited, interested about something that's different, and is willing to sort of take the plunge, not 100% knowing what they're getting into. Because for most people that we perform for, they have rarely, if ever, seen a classical percussion ensemble concert, so it's going to be a new experience for them. But we feel like there's an opportunity for us to reach some new audiences that maybe are not your typical classical music audience in that way, because people see something and it maybe just it draws on something different. It appeals to them in a different way. Maybe it speaks to a different lived experience, or speaks to a different set of interests that they might have. But then there is sometimes the challenge of like winning over the very established classical music audience that does have a certain set of expectations. And I feel like for us, we're always trying to portray clearly that what we do is exciting and fun, and also that we're just like very professional and things are at a really high level. So when the audience comes in, they see what we're doing, I think hopefully right away they get the sense of like, of trust in a way. You get an audience's trust by just coming in and like immediately showing them, you're on top of things and you have them. And then once they trust, then you can sort of take them on this journey and lead them to wherever it's going to go. And hopefully people are open for that journey going to a different place than what they might have experienced in the concert hall before, or what they might have experienced if they're usually going to more like pop or hip hop or country music or whatever, any other kind of genre type shows, that hopefully they're up for a journey that's going to take them to a different place.
I love both of those answers because they resonate with the experience that I've had here. And David, you talked about the importance of communication. Of course, everyone has a window from stage where you can talk about the piece, but you already have the people there that have committed to experiencing it with you, right? I appreciate deeply this type of interaction where if people choose to hear a little bit more background, they can experience this on their own time. And then for backing one step further, the mission-based part of this, you have to go out and tell people over and over again why it's important to have new designs and new artists in the concert hall, why living composers are the most important aspect of what American orchestras can be doing right now. And then you bring people like Clarice Assad and bring them as often as she'll say yes to coming, right? I mean, that's vital too, because you can't be in a room with her and not be infected with her energy, right? And infected may be the wrong word, but I think you know what I mean. Because it's palpable. And then, like you said, I think, Rob, the quality issue. If you're doing something different, but your heart isn't fully in it, or it's gotten less rehearsal than the other piece on the program, people can tell that there's a misalignment with what you're saying and then how you're living it out. And so I think that that's the importance, and that's why we're so excited to have a group of your quality and commitment to these ideals coming, because like I said, we're going to feel that alignment in the concert hall, and that's why play is last on the program, because we want people to know that that's the focus of this event. And then we're going to hear two other incredible pieces on the program, the Samuel Coleridge Taylor Ballade in A minor, conducted by our associate conductor, Antoine Clark. And then the reason Scheherazade appears on the first half is because Clarice picked that piece. I said, what is the piece that most inspired you as a young person to become a musician? And that was her selection. Wow. So she's going to come out with us not only for play, but when we perform Scheherazade, she'll come out and be the speaker before the piece and tell everybody why this piece meant so much to her and shaped her voice as a composer today.
Cool. I really love that. It just makes it more personal, because that can be... one amazing thing that happens in classical music is that, people, the practitioners of classical music dedicate their lives to it, and they can sometimes be viewed as larger than life or something like that. But that has that's amazing. There's all these people that we look up to in our lives. Yo-Yo Ma, oh my God, I've never been in a room with that guy. I think of him as this larger than life figure, but he's also able to communicate with people and be real. You know what I mean? And I think that that the personal touch of having Clarice talk about how this piece, which could be viewed as just a standard repertoire orchestral piece, but was actually this transformative experience in her life, and have that be a part of the whole evening. It's just really amazing, and it makes it more than just a great piece of music that's wonderful to hear an orchestra play. It sort of makes it relevant to the folks who were there at the concert on that evening to hear Clarice and hear her work. This is great. Yeah. We just love you guys. We're so excited to be a part of it.
So cool.
We appreciate it.
Big percussion piece too, Scheherazade.
That's right.
There's a lot happening there. And like you said, we will perform canonical masterworks at the Wheeling Symphony, but there will always be a reason why this one appears on this concert. And to know that if Scheherazade hadn't been played in Clarice's hometown orchestra, then her bright, brilliant new voice wouldn't have evolved the same way. Like, that gives us another reason to say we need to represent all aspects of our history that you talked about being several hundred years on our stages. And we have 4 masterworks a year at the Wheeling Symphony. Every minute is precious. So we do it with a lot of intentionality. And speaking of next week, I just want to remind everyone who's watching that at 6:30 on Thursday, March 7th, Third Coast Percussion will be up at Wheeling Park High School. And this event is designed for all ages, but we're going to be primarily focused on an educational environment because it's Music in Our Schools Month, and nationally, and we wanted to tie that in. So there's going to be a few short performances by Third Coast, some lecture demonstrations about the piece that we're going to experience play in the concert hall, and that concert will take place Friday night, March the 8th at 7:30 p.m. at the Capitol Theater here in beautiful downtown Wheeling. So, David, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to have you here. We're going to see you in exactly a week. We'll be getting ready for our concert right about
Yeah,
now.
awesome. Yeah, this has been a real pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
All right, bye, everybody. We'll see you at the concert hall next week.